Thank you for that, Lord Provost. I'll get straight to my remarks, as I understand that you have got your stopwatch ticking. But a little leeway would be appreciated, if you can possibly manage that. Anyway, I'm pleased to present to Council this first budget of the new administration. And for their help in supporting the budget process, I want to thank Hugh Dunn, the finance team, and Joanna Hamilton-Rigg as policy and advice supporter, as policy and support advisor to me and the Vice Convener. I acknowledge the extra burden that's been placed on them in producing a draft consultation budget and in preparing the mid-year budget review. The administration appreciates those additional efforts and the quality of their work. Most of our budget themes today reflect both the rising demand for council services and the continuing financial constraints relative to those demands, which we've seen for far too many years now. Whilst the last administration carried through difficult decisions in its transformation programme, there's no doubt that this administration and the Council has further to go to be confident of financial stability over the longer term. That's particularly true in the context of one-year budget settlements and substantial political, economic and fiscal uncertainties to which Brexit is an unwelcome addition. I will say more about the longer term in due course. And that brings me to the economic and political environment for this budget. The main feature and failure in economic policy remains the fixation with deficit reduction. It produced the longest recession in modern times, the slowest recovery possibly ever, and the slowest growth in real wages for well over a century. The Office of Budget Responsibility, the OECD and the Bank of England have all, in recent months, produced substantial downward projections for UK economic growth, which have only been compounded by the prospect of leaving the European Union. The UK government response has been simply to plough on with the occasional soundbites, such as an economy that works for everyone, and a declared but unsupported concern for those who are just about managing. This language acknowledges the reality that we were, in fact, never all in this together, and we will not be until policy changes. Since 2015, one particular effect of Conservative government policies has been to reduce the incomes of the least well-off, but to increase the incomes of the top 20%. So it remains true, as Disraeli said over 150 years ago, that a Conservative government is an organised hypocrisy. And I think there is also much to be said for the view that a good deal of economic prosperity and citizens' rights are being sacrificed on the altar of Conservative Party unity. Austerity, which was originally slated to end in 2015, is on present policies likely to continue into the 2030s. And that is a huge and historic failure, inflicting 2 decades of unnecessary economic damage and hardship. But the real reason for austerity must be ideological, because all the evidence and basic economics are firmly against it. There's been a pickup in global growth in recent months, but there's little sign that the UK is taking part. Even in the Eurozone, growth is significantly better than in the UK, as the UK has slid from the top to the bottom of the G7 growth league table. But still, we plough on. We plough on with failed economic policies and a damaged and divided UK government, a government capable in EU negotiations of making 5 impossible demands before breakfast. But now let me turn to the budget in this current financial year. This is the second year in which the Finance and Resources Committee has considered a mid-year budget review. The review has proved useful, in part as an early warning of increasing budget pressures, giving time for mitigating actions. In the review, a potential £4 million overspend was identified, the net effect of overspends in health and social care, and managing increasing homelessness in safer and stronger communities. Nonetheless, identification of additional income and active management of financial pressures allowed a balanced position to be projected for the year, and that remains where we are. The budget is forecast to balance despite the requirement for a total of nearly £40 million in savings in this financial year. The Coalition's overriding priority, consistent with that of the previous administration, is to maintain services to the greatest extent possible with the resources available and to deploy those resources as efficiently and effectively as we can. We're also aiming to maximise our income. The financial pressures on the Council and the unsettling process of transformation in a range of Council services has meant a demanding and difficult time for Council staff, and I, along with the whole administration, acknowledge and appreciate how much additional work has been required and offer our sincere thanks for that commitment and for what has been achieved. Moving on to the housing revenue account, a balanced position is expected with a total projected spend of £71 million. The HRA business plan sets out a 10-year investment strategy to deliver up to 10,000 new, affordable and low-cost homes, with discussions continuing with housing associations to match that number. Investment over the next 5 years will total £709 million, coming from a combination of capital receipts, prudential borrowing, capital funded from revenue and Scottish Government subsidy. As a result, the Council's house building programme continues to expand. Over 2,000 homes are under construction across 32 sites in the city, well over 1,000 have already been completed, and 3,000 more are in design development. This is a programme in which we can take some pride, and it is also a demonstration of the good things that the public sector can achieve. I now come to the Coalition's budget proposals for the coming financial year, as set before Council today. Edinburgh's allocation under the Local Government Finance Settlement, announced last December, and the further funding arising from the January announcement by the Finance Secretary is 0.4% less in cash terms than last year. In addition to that, the Scottish Government's increased funding to support the expansion of early learning and childcare provision and implementation of the Carers Act adds over £10 million to support local services. At the time of the mid-year review, the Council's financial planning had assumed nearly £21 million of savings in 2018-19, which was reflected in the budget consultation. As the motion states, the Coalition view is that most of those proposed savings need to be made to allow the Council better to address rising pressures in property repairs, health and social care and homelessness. We have nevertheless responded to the consultation on the budget as the previous administration always did. The Coalition has made a smaller reduction in funding for Edinburgh Leisure and has created a fund for those who may find the proposed garden waste charge difficult to meet. We have maintained funding for the night noise team in acknowledgement of the public response. And in addition, as I'm sure we all remember, the music school proposal was dropped in response to the degree of public reaction. Responses to the consultation have also led us to restate the Coalition commitment to the principle of a transient visitor levy, and such a levy is commonplace in major tourist destination cities around the world, and we will be consulting with stakeholders in the development of our proposal. I will not repeat all the budget lines in section 3 of the motion. They're there for all to see and have already been covered by the media, and I'm time limited. I'm sure, though, they'll be covered by others in their own remarks. All I will say now is that the overall intention has been to maintain and improve service provision as far as we can, as demonstrated by the additional allocations in areas of particular demand. Part of this budget is the proposed 3% pay award to council staff. It acknowledges the additional work staff have undertaken in recent years and the fall in the real value of public sector pay over a longer period. Affordability has nevertheless had to be a factor in our calculation. There are two further strands which I would like to mention. The first is income maximisation, and the second is shared services with other councils where that makes financial and administrative sense. Officers are already working on proposals, and I want to see business cases coming forward as soon as it's practical. Following consultation with the Green Group, a number of spend to save and other budget lines have been included in section 4 of the Coalition motion, as well as a further financial commitment to tree planting in the city. This is in addition to our shared commitment to further substantial funding for homelessness services and the concept of a transient visitor levy. The Coalition also accepts the spend to save proposal in the Conservative motion and will investigate the proposal for mobile messaging signals for traffic management. The mid-year review in November proposed a 3% rise in council tax in 2018-19, and members will see that this is included in the Coalition budget. As in this financial year, we believe this has been necessary to protect council services and to help manage rising demand. Taken in the round then, I believe that all our revenue budget proposals follow through on the Coalition's commitments and values. There will nevertheless still be a great deal of work that needs to be done to bring this budget to balance by year end. Turning to capital investment, the programme over the next 5 years will total just over £650 million. This includes additional investment of £40 million for new projects, as set out in Section 5 of the Capital Coalition motion before us today. We propose to invest £12.7 million in a new primary school for South Edinburgh and will provide a £7.9 million contribution towards the Meadowbank Stadium. We've also found £10 million for a new care home and £7.8 million towards the cost of rising school rolls. The motion further sets out a capital spend of £21 million on roads, pavements and bridges, with another £2.5 million for repairs under the revenue budget. An additional £12 million has been allocated for the refurbishment of the North Bridge, and we propose to invest £8.9 million in the next phase of the Water Relief Flood Prevention Scheme. And we have also made a financial commitment to replace the Burnshock Bridge. At a time of financial stringency, these are just some of the substantial investments in the city's infrastructure, which will also provide welcome support to the local economy. There are risks to any budget which tend to rise with scale and complexity, but what's critical is the management or mitigation of those risks, and that's what's set out in the Risks and Reserves report for us today. Demographic changes, changes to welfare regulations, the achievement of planned savings, funding levels in areas of particular financial pressure, local development plan infrastructure costs, cybersecurity and inflation are all genuine concerns. In recognition of these risks, we will continue with the mid-year budget review amongst a range of other measures. For the future, the Council must secure financial sustainability. I believe that the last administration took the Council a long way down that path, although more needs to be done. And although this is a one-year budget, the administration is taking a longer view. Our programme for the capital, set out last year, forms the basis of our longer-term planning. During this year, we will finalise this approach for the lifetime of the administration. Quality of service provision, prevention, affordability, fairness and inclusion will all be key aspects. Before concluding, I want to recommend to members the Accounts Commission's Scotland-wide financial review for 2016-17, which was issued at the end of November last year. I believe the Council's performance emerges well, both relative to other authorities and in absolute terms. But nonetheless, we need to sustain our efforts. So, to conclude then, Lord Provost, we must not lose sight of the fact that this is a growing and successful city. The Coalition aims to balance what is financially necessary with our values and our duty to provide the best services we can in supporting that success. We fully accept our responsibilities in that respect and will continue with our efforts to meet them effectively, transparently and remaining open to the views of others. I move the motion in my name.